Good afternoon, Scott. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me down here. It's great. Thanks for spending a little bit of your afternoon and late morning with me and give me a chance to talk a little bit about what we're doing at NAHB and really how the Federation is working together to make sure that we accomplish NAHB's mission. I want to start a little bit about. I'm going to start small and I'll broaden out a little bit. Hit a little bit what we're doing at NAHB right now, and then talk a little bit about advocacy. Maybe we'll talk a little bit about national politics, as terrifying as that topic is, and then we'll talk a little bit kind of macroeconomics about where we're going, and leave a little bit of time for your questions if you have any. So as Scott said, I've been on the job now for almost a year, but certainly not new to the Federation or NAHB. And one of the things I wanted to do first off when I came in was really rededicate NAHB to our mission. And if you know anything about the NAHB mission, it's twofold. I call it the twin mission, and I'll paraphrase it. But the first part of the mission is providing affordable housing opportunities for all. Affordable housing opportunities for all. The second part of our mission is to provide professional excellence for our members. And I really we have to satisfy the second part of the mission in order to accomplish the first. And I mean that because at our heart, NAHB is a business federation, and our business happens to be housing. And if we can provide the services and the education and the networking, the knowledge to make you better businessmen and better businesswomen, you will have an easier time satisfying the first calling of our mission, which is to provide affordable and attainable housing opportunities for all. And one of the ways we want to start leaning into that is a brand new strategic plan. NAHB has a strategic plan. For those of you who are part of the NAHB leadership, whether you're a delegate or a member of the board of directors, I've asked anybody if they can name the old strategic plan, and did you know we have one? And somebody said no, because it kind of resided in the top drawer of most of the executive team. We never did anything with it. It so happens that our strategic plan was expiring at the end of 23. So what a great opportunity, new CEO, but to come up with a new strategic plan that really honored that mission. So we convened. We did focus group surveys. We surveyed about 3,000 members. We had focus groups, and then we convened a group in Washington, D.C. over intense 2 days to come into town and help build that plan. Craig Tolson was part of that. It was really important for us to make sure that we were surveying and hearing from every corner of the Federation, builders, both single and multifamily, first-time affordable rental, market rate, custom, our associates, and of course our executive officers, to make sure that if we were going to truly represent the industry, we had to represent every corner of it. And that group came together in the fall. We continued to massage the plan, and ultimately our board of directors approved the plan in early December. And there's 5 pillars of our strategic plan. I'll walk through them really quickly and what I think they mean to me. The first is NAHB as a federation. How does NAHB make sure that we are creating success for our state and our local associations? You don't join NAHB. You join your local association, and that's where the rubber meets the road. And for many of our members, they join at the local association, they pay their dues, and they don't realize that $198 of their dues comes up to Washington, D.C. So how do we do a better job of making sure that those members understand that there is a 3-tiered federation that has their back at every level of government? And we do that by making sure that the folks that are responsible for recruiting and retaining those members, they have all the tools that we can provide for our local EOs to be successful. Because if our local EOs are successful and our local associations are successful, that means you are successful. So NAHB is a federation leaning in more than rather sitting inside the Beltway waiting for you all to call us. Number 2 is NAHB as members. How do we provide that professional success? How do we provide the networking opportunities, the educational opportunities for you all to be better businessmen and better businesswomen? Again, how do we make sure that we are advocating better for you as members with whatever part of the industry you represent and you work in, that we are making sure you're professionally successful. The third part is advocacy. I'm going to talk a little bit more about advocacy in depth, but that's what we do really, really well. And 83 years ago, about 5 local home builders associations decided to come together and create NAHB because they needed national representation. 5 local associations. Now we're a federation of over 600 state and local associations. And our number one focus is making sure that we have your back in Washington, D.C., and making sure that we are providing the legislative, judicial, regulatory, and the economic environment for you all to succeed. That's what we do day in and day out. Public affairs, of course, they are our megaphone. They are the ones that talk about our victories, talk about our defeats, make sure that our membership and the public is aware of what we do. The fourth pillar is public image. It is time for this industry to stand up and be proud of what we do. I know you're all proud of what you do, but how do we get local lawmakers, federal lawmakers, the press, the NIMBYs, our neighbors, to understand that we are the providers of housing in this country, that everybody who lives in an apartment or a home most likely lived in one built by a member of this federation. And that is what we have to do more and more. We have to call out when people are putting policies in place to keep others from attaining home ownership, or at least having a safe, decent, affordable rent apartment to live in. We have got to lean into this moment. I'll talk more about what I think the moment is right now. And lastly is workforce development. There is no bigger issue facing this industry over the next 10 years than the availability of skilled labor in our industry. None. It will be the biggest governor on our ability to provide the 1.5 million units that we need to build every year to keep up with demand. Interest rates will fall. Supply chains will continue to resolve themselves. Maybe even lots get a little bit cheaper and more available. But labor will be persistent. For the last decade, we've had about 400,000 openings in the construction industry, month after month, year after year. We have got to solve the problem of workforce in this country. And it's two sides of the same coin. One, how do we train and attract and retain the younger generation of contractors in this country? How do we get kids to say, I don't have to go to a 4-year college and get a political science degree to be successful in this country? The trades can no longer be plan B. Oh, I didn't make it in college. Oh, he's an electrician. Oh, she's a plumber. That can't be it. The trades have to be plan A, right next to a 4-year college degree. So that's job one. The second job is immigration reform. Always a third rail. Social Security was a third rail. Immigration is as close to a third rail as you're going to find in Washington, D.C. these days. We've got to solve soup to nuts, comprehensive immigration reform, from securing the border all the way to what do we do with 11 or 12 million undocumented folks that are already in this country. We have got to find a solution to that. Almost 23% of the construction labor in this country, not just home building, but construction writ large, is immigrant labor. They are part of our solution. Until I will train every person who wants to work in this country, and we still won't get there. We need immigrant labor. We need to allow it to come into this country legally. We need to train immigrants because a lot of them get their start in this industry. And the other part of the workforce development story that we have to tell is that they are tomorrow's entrepreneurs. They're learning a skill. Maybe they're an apprentice, they're a journeyman, they're working in a company. 5 or 10 years from now, they probably go out on their own. Then they hire their own crews. They got 3 or 4 trucks on the road. And then guess what? 15 years from now, I like to say you're sitting on your bass boat, and the only time you come to shore is when you got to price a job. We have to tell that story, and we have to make sure that as much as attaining skills and how to do something, it's also those soft skills on how to run a business. That is the story of workforce development. And if we can tell that story effectively and get through to the next generation, we are setting ourselves up to be successful. We are that is as much a part of what we do as it is, just building homes. We have to train the next generation. So those are the 5 pillars of NAHB. We're really going to lean into those. Staffing to them, budgeting to them, making ourselves available. One of the things that I've been doing in the last year is really getting out on the road. In fact, I think this is my 12th trip out since the first of the year. and talking to you all and making sure that you know that there is a whole team at NAHB that has your back, and has our executive officers back here at the state level and across the state of Virginia. We're just a stone's throw away. Well, a 90-mile stone's throw away, but nonetheless, some of you got good arms. We are close by, and we have such resources. And more importantly, we aggregate everything that's going around across the country. And we travel. I've been across this country, like I said, over the last year, and I will tell you, Virginia's not special. Don't take it wrong. I love Virginia. I'm a Virginian. It's better than the People's Republic of Maryland across the river. And I'm, you heard I'm from Connecticut originally, the People's Republic of Connecticut. I love Virginia, but you're not special. I don't mean this in the sense of course, you're special. I mean it in the sense that your problems are no different than anybody else. I was in Fayetteville, North Carolina. I've been in Dallas. I've been in Austin, Texas, Fargo, North Dakota, and I've been in Albany, New York. And guess what? Everybody has the same problems you are. No labor, no land, NIMBYism. You're not special, which means that together as an association of 140,000 professionals, you're not alone, that someone has figured out a way to make things better in their community, which means we can make them better here in Virginia. That's what we can do as well. We can bring those stories from across the country to you all to help you solve problems. So use us. We work for you. I am your employee. Use us. I am here to help you. Talk a little bit about advocacy now. Advocacy is our big pillar. We've got a couple big wins in a time when Congress really isn't doing big stuff. We're now fully into the silly season. Every day we get closer to the campaign. Every day I talk to another builder who says, really, this is what we're going to get, Trump and Biden? And I say every day, yes, we're going to get Trump and Biden. But we haven't managed to have a couple wins on two of those two big priorities. One was on workforce. You've heard us over the last year that the Home Builders Institute is our workforce development arm, and they are the largest contractor to the Job Corps program, which is a Department of Labor program. They train at-risk youth in the trades. The Republican Congress, in their infinite wisdom, decided to eliminate the Job Corps program at a time when we need as many workers as we can. It was a $1.7 billion program. They gutted it from their budget last summer. We activated very, very quickly. We got calls from the speaker asking us not to activate on this. Hey, don't worry about it. The Senate will fix it. Now, I'm an old House staffer, as you heard. I hate the Senate. I don't trust them to do anything. And I'm not willing to put my career on the line that the Senate will fix something. We're going to fix it where it came from, and that was in the House. So we worked really, really hard. Many of you probably talked to your lawmakers on behalf of NAHB and the Job Corps program. And I'm happy to say 2 weeks ago, the president signed the appropriations bill that will fully fund Job Corps at $1.7 billion. Again, one of our number one strategic goals is workforce development. We had to go fight for it, and we were successful. Number two, how many of you all are having distributional transformer issues? Oh, I'm glad there's one. Usually. Yeah. Everywhere I go, somebody asks me if I carry a transformer in my pocket. I could lift that up. But transformers, consistency, and all electrical components seem to be a real challenge right now, and they have been for about the last 2 years. We just don't make enough transformers here in the United States. We don't make enough of the steel that goes into the guts. We just don't produce enough. We tend to bring a lot across the seas, South Korea, Japan, Mexico. Well, maybe not the seas in Mexico, but the border nonetheless. But we just don't build enough here. The challenge is that we had a regulation from the Biden administration that was going to increase the efficiency of those distributional transformers. Does anybody know how efficient a current transformer is? It's 98% efficient. That's pretty good. I'm not a mathematician, but it seems like it's really hard to squeeze that last 2% out. But they proposed a rule that we were told by the manufacturers of transformers, whether international or national, that until they resolve that, they were going to essentially put a pause on current production because they weren't going to be stuck with a bunch of transformers that the government wasn't going to allow them to use. So we activated on that and said, look, we're not producing enough transformers. How about we not do a rulemaking that further constricts supply? how about we take a pause here? Let's get more transformers in the marketplace. Let's build more. And we were able to do that. The administration backed way off. They are going to do some transformer efficiency upgrades, but it's those big power plant level transformers, not the small ones that we use to power our apartment complexes or our subdivisions. So another win, trying to lower that regulatory burden on the industry at a time when we can ill afford any more added costs. I do want to flag one thing that Dan, you raised it, and that is a real potential. The Biden administration giveth and it taketh away. This one I think is going to have a big impact on a lot of states. The FHA, I don't know how many of you build into the FHA market, where you have builders who or buyers who are using FHA financing, or VA or USDA, but they are proposing to make any homes financed with any new homes financed with FHA financing. Those homes have to meet the 21 IEECC or equivalent energy code. Last time I checked, Virginia is nowhere near the 21 IEECC. In fact, there's only 5 states. I'll rattle them off. Don't be shocked. Connecticut, Massachusetts, California, Washington State. And Illinois is probably in there too. Oh, New Jersey, big shock. So what I would say to everyone here, and I was actually on a call with the White House yesterday on this, is you are going to ensure that the people who need the biggest help getting into that first rung of home ownership, first-time home buyers, first-generation home buyers, they no longer will have access to that unless you're using FHA financing. You've got to be smarter about this. I'm willing to let them go up to like the 15 code, right? Just right. We want to show that we're moving forward on energy efficiency, but let's not. I mean, the 21 code is really difficult. First jurisdiction in the country to adopt the 21 code was Kansas City. Since they adopted the code, they've had 2 building permits pulled. They think it adds they estimated between $20,000 and $35,000 to the cost of a house in Kansas City. Turns out an independent think tank decided to challenge those numbers. Big shock. NAHB had we had overcalculated it. Turns out the high end of that range was $22,000. I mean, we're talking the difference between $7,000 here. The fact is that this code is terribly unaffordable, especially for states that aren't even close to it. So we're going to fight against that, but keep on the lookout for that. That may be coming out in the next little while. So off of some advocacy wins and some headwinds, just talk a little bit about the election. Things are going to get crazy, as you'd imagine. Virginia, swingy. We haven't really been swingy for the presidential in a long time, but with Glenn Youngkin's win, I think there's this kind of thought that maybe the Republicans can play nationally here. I'm not sure I believe that. I kind of remember watching the 2016 election. Donald Trump was marching up the coast, Ohio, not the coast, but Florida, North Carolina, right? He gets up to Virginia, he's winning Virginia, and we're watching the election. That's it. Trump's going to win Virginia. I said, no. Northern Virginia hasn't come in yet. And sure enough, boom, and Hillary won. So I'm not so sure Virginia is swingy as people want to say it is, but my guess is you'll get a lot of money here. And that's always fun because nothing worse than October, November spent with political ads. But it is going to be the silly season, and where it's going, I don't know. I'm not even going to hazard a prediction on this. I think if you're a Trump fan, ask yourself this: do you view Trump as a challenger, or do you view Trump as an incumbent? If the electorate views Trump as a challenger to President Biden, he does very, very well. When you remind people that he's got a record he's got to run on and was a president, guess what happens? His numbers go way down, and people are reminding themselves of whether they liked or didn't like Trump. That's the factor that we don't know yet. When people go to the ballot box, whether it's early voting or they go in November, and whether they're going to pull or not pull the lever for Trump, how do you view him? And that's the question we don't know the answer to yet, because it's 2 different people in a lot of the electorate's mind. So lastly, I'll wrap up. Do I have a little bit of time? Talk macroeconomics. Just big picture. We were optimistic that interest rates were really going to start tapering off towards the end of the year. We're a little less optimistic. We have been calling for 2 rate cuts by the Federal Reserve, both in the back half of the year or the last quarter of the year. We're still sticking with that, but there were some parts of the market had priced in 6 rate cuts. We always thought that was overly optimistic. Then we got to 3. We're sticking with 2. If you saw Jay Powell yesterday, he came out and said inflation continues to be persistently higher than we'd like. They're trying to get to that magic, really not scientifically backed 2%. We're not there yet. We're at about 3.5% for the inflation gauges that they watch. So we think that interest rates are going to stay higher for longer. Not necessarily great for the marketplace. We all know the story. Existing homeowners are waiting. They're rate locked. They're not going to leave their, in my case, a 2.75% mortgage rate to move. We need to see things get into that low 6s, maybe even to the high 5s before we think that really unlocks demand. If that moves faster, we need to be ready. We need to make sure that our lawmakers are ready to understand that demand is coming. It is right under the surface. It has been completely tamped down. Congratulations, Fed. You wanted to kill housing. You did it. Housing continues to be the largest inflationary factor inside those numbers. The largest factor, rents, and then how they compute home ownership. And the Fed has said it. Joe Biden said it in his State of the Union. Not just housing supply. The only way that we are going to solve the affordability problem in this country is to build more units. And the only people who are going to do that are you all in this room. And this is our moment. This is the year where interest rates are high, demand hasn't come flying back yet, where I would talk to your lawmakers and implore them that if you want to be ready to grow over the next 5 years, because we are heading into a golden time for home building, because the demographics, it's the millennials that are coming into their prime home buying years. They are the biggest generational cohort in a long time and for a long time after. They are in their prime time buying ages over the next 5 years. This is the time for this industry to remind them, lawmakers in particular, that this is where we will shine. And unless you want to go back to high home prices and elevator clauses and all these things that plagued us after COVID and certainly early in the 2000s. Now is the time to clear the decks regulatorily, make it easier for us to build, make it less costly for us to build, and we will be ready to meet demand. That is the story we need to tell. This is the year to do it, because when demand comes back in 25, we're going to be behind the curve. I'm sorry, they're going to be behind the curve. And we have to remind people, if you want your grandkids, if you want your neighbor's kids, if you want, Craig and I were just talking at our table here, if you want all those homegrown Virginia state school kids and Virginia private school kids to stay in the area that they lived, we are the ones that are going to do this. We need to build more apartments, we need more attainable housing. But that is the message I'm asking you all to bring to your lawmakers at the local level, that they can be part of the solution. You want to attract jobs to Virginia? You got to make sure you have a housing plan. And again, you are all part of the greatest network in this country dedicated to building affordable and attainable housing. The greatest network. Let us all come together and let us make sure that we are shining in this moment, because we provide the American dream of home ownership. No one else will do it. My realtor friends in the room, my mortgage banker friends in the room, I love you all. But this industry and this association, we speak for home building. Everyone else will be happy to talk about it for you. It is our time to talk about supply and talk about that we are the only place that will do this. Thank you all. I'm happy to take a couple of questions. Hopefully I didn't over it, but thank you all for having me. Again, thanks for spending some time with me. Thank you. Any questions? Anything that's bugging you? Well, I can imagine there's a lot of stuff bugging you. Yeah.
So I know that the staff was at IBS, but on February 21st, there was a front page article in the Washington Post basically coming after NAHB and our local trade associations for preventing energy efficient improvements to the code. And it was really targeted at our industry, basically commenting that we are kind of tamping down future efficiency.
Yeah.
And it was attacked, and I was disappointed to see there was no concerted response. I get it, you were all in Vegas, but.
Yeah, I actually really like those stories because it shows that we're flexing our muscles, right? I like when they write the big bad home builders. one of the biggest trades in town, right? I like those stories. Yeah, let's flex a little bit. Let's remind people that if you're gonna, the old kind of Donald Trump adage, if you're gonna punch, I'm gonna punch you back twice as hard. But to your point, we need to persistently tell the story that saving $12 a month on your monthly energy bills doesn't equate paying $25,000 more for the cost of the house. I don't care. Oh, well, the house is going to be around for 80 years. Yeah, I don't care, because you can't get the first few people into that home. And especially when you have administrations and people want to make sure we're satisfying that low end of the market, energy efficiency is a nice to have. What I tell people all the time is you are building the most efficient and resilient home on the market today. Don't let anybody else tell you any differently. Oh, in California. No. In Virginia, you are building the most energy efficient and resilient home on the market today. That should be celebrated. The real problem is all the energy hogs built in 1978. That's where the problems are. They won't do it. The 137 million homes were built before 2000, which we kind of hold as when modern codes came in after that. 130 million homes. If you cared about energy efficiency in the built environment, go solve that problem. I get it, it's not easy. And my remodeler friends in the room, that you should be telling the story. You can do that, right? That's what we have to focus on. That is the biggest energy sink. We're going to build 1 million single family homes nationwide this year. That is a drop in the bucket in the energy efficiency equation, a drop in the bucket. The real problem are all the old homes. And here we are in historic Richmond, right? You got a lot of old homes down here. But we have to tell that story. All those homes built in the 70s, my house, 1985. I assure you, it is not anywhere near as efficient as the home you just built yesterday. Yes, sir.
You mentioned a comment in regards to workforce being the most important thing that we work on. And but I also think about the regulation that we fight in the headwinds, because to build a home today takes roughly 20-25% longer, which then requires 20-25% more workforce. And with so many different home building associations around the country, does NAHB work in the advocacy of sharing information, best practices, what the other HBAs are doing to fight off the regulation that comes at us, whether it's from energy efficiency, stormwater management, and stuff like that? Because if we're always fighting it on our own, we then have to raise money from inside our group to create more information, look for new ways to do things like that, and that data and information is very expensive.
So one of the things we do, we have a state and local government affairs team at NAHB. We do not lobby in the state and local state governments or local governments. It's not our job. But our job is to aggregate all of those things. So we have a library going back 11 years so we have something called the State and Local Issues Fund. And we got a $300,000 fund that HBAs can apply to for us to help money on a campaign. So we have an 11-year library of those campaigns, both successful and ones where we lost and where we can learn from. Our team is always on the road picking up those stories. So there's something called the Montana Miracle right now. Montana, a very favorable climate. I know you don't always have that here in Richmond, but a favorable climate got them to a statewide housing plan to force localities to allow more homes to be built. That's something we can give to you. And the other piece is we hold a monthly, I think it's monthly or at least quarterly roundtable with our state and local lobbying teams from across the country, where we just provide a forum for California to tell you how crazy things are out there. And Craig and Andrew can listen in and say, well, that's not that bad as it is here, but you can pick up little things because, as you know, just like the weather, every bad idea in this country seems to blow from Oregon, Washington, California. But we do that. That's our. Any Californians here? No offense. So just so you know, California, I'll give you a crazy example. There's a lawmaker there that, in order to help with affordability, wants to allow home builders to be able to sell one home a year. One home. The governor wants to build something like 500,000 new homes every year. I said, well, okay, we need 500,000 builders then, apparently, which is good for membership. Like, I'm all for that. I'm all in. But anyway, yeah, we do have that, and I know Craig and Andrew take advantage of that, but those are the resources we can provide across the country. Yes, sir.
Now that I know your home's from the 80s, can I sell you a brand new?
Not at 7% mortgage rates. Yeah, my wife and I have talked about when we move my kids. So my son's in junior in high school. My daughter's getting ready to graduate 8th grade. I'm like, house is about to get a little bit bigger because we're going to start pushing people out and get rid of the Legos. So I don't know yet, but I'll keep you in mind. Well, did I mention I went to UConn and we just won our second national? Okay, sorry. I was in North Carolina. I told you I was in Chapel Hill. So we just tied North Carolina for 6. So that was a fun conversation with those knuckleheads. Anyway. Any other questions? So I just one last shameless plug for Craig, for Emily, Rhonda, and I just saw Andrew kind of pacing back. Oh, there you are. You have a nationally acclaimed team. I'm just telling you, they lean into NAHB. When we talk about the partnership that I want to build, Virginia does it, right? They're promoting our programs. They've talked to you about them. Scott, you talked about them this morning and today. This is what we need in all 50 states. All 50 states. And I just want to commend you all. You've been a great resource to me. Emily and I got to know each other. We both did some professional training last summer. But you have a wonderful team here that really works really hard for you, but more importantly, helps connect the Federation. So thank you all for having me.